Might put it in a state, then the next time you run the process, you might have a hiccup you gotta overcome because you skipped a normal step. So I wanted to shorten it. I just added, instead of 50, I just brought it up to 14. That'll allow the recipe to finish how it normally does. I'll skip this 120 seconds, 2 minutes, because I already know this is conditioned.
So each cycle of operation indicates how thick for the sample?
No. It indicates some idea of how much material is coming out of the ampoule.
Okay, so how much material based on what is the unit?
Since you're dealing with vapor pressure, it'll be a combination between pressure and pumping speed.
Yeah, correlation based on that.
Both of those two. So depending on the pressure and the pumping speed will give you a relative peak height.
Yes.
That peak height will differ pump to pump, even if the time the valve is open is the same with the same vapor pressure. So it takes pressure and pumping speed.
I understand. So can we monitor that data for the natural amount?
You can get a rough idea depending on. Bruce or Noel would know roughly how many cycles you could get out of how many grams of TMA.
I mean, there is a table instruction or something like this.
There's probably a curve that's been developed. But it really depends on how much sample size you're using. So, since ALD is a self-limiting reaction, meaning it only reacts to how many sites it can grab onto. Anything else is wasted. So, the peak height and the material you would need for a sample of a 1/2 inch for a 1/2 inch versus a full 6-inch wafer is a little bit different. So you can't go with just 5 cycles. So you can't put too much. Where in the PVD system, if you're depositing too much, it's going somewhere.
Yes.
In the ALD, you're not reacting, so you're not getting any more build. It's either reacting in a 4 line or all the chemistry is going to the pump. So you want to have, as you run it, especially if you're running the same recipe all the time, you'll know how many cycles you can get.
Yeah,
you get a feel for it. TMA is pretty easy to get. You can get it in a few days. I don't like the round valves that you got. I like these valves better. They fit better. Sigma Aldrich and Strem, if you send the ampule back to them, they'll refill it with TMA versus, just having to get a new one all the time. You may want to get a new one, and then when dies, kick it back out and just keep it in the can. Or you could just say we're out. Whenever you're out of material, you won't have that peak anymore. Right now we're only seeing 1 peak. So in this case, as part of the B part of the AB process, we're only seeing B, B, B. We're going to do the conditioning on A, or the TMA on 3A, so we'll do AAA. Then whenever we run the recipe, it'll be AB, AB, AB. That's whenever you'll start to get the TMA H2O, which will bring it to aluminum oxide. That's what will create the aluminum oxide. So, we're going to do the same thing with the TMA. I'm going to close the water valve. It's your option if you take that hose off or not, but you have to close the water valve. It's best to keep the valves on the ampules closed unless you're absolutely going to need them for running processes. It's not a good practice to keep the manual valves open all the time. Some people do, but then eventually what you can get is a little bit of buildup on the seat of the ALD valve. Then your precursor leaks out into the process, and then you just, if it leaks enough, then you wasted $1,500. Now I'm going to open the manual valve on the TMA, which is a little bit warm. H2O is closed. Again, tomorrow I'll take care, I should have a conditioning recipe. Excuse me. I'll get into what this is tomorrow, or maybe a little bit today. What time we go to today? Say 5?
Yeah.
Everybody 5?
I live here.
You live here? Okay, so.
So are you trying to use the same recipe now condition the TMA factor?
I'm just doing the same recipe.
Right.
So I'm actually using a sub recipe
From the
of this. After we get,
Condition.
this is what the rest of the day looks like. We're going to do the conditioning of the TMA. We'll do 50 cycles of that. Then we'll be ready to load a wafer. We'll be ready to run a recipe. One, do a vent, load the wafer, pump it. Then I'll get into this recipe in a lot more detail. We'll spend about a half hour, 40 minutes going through that process. Then we'll run that recipe. That'll bring us to about 5 o'clock, 5-ish. I'll answer whatever questions we want to get to that point. That recipe will run for a couple hours this evening. Tomorrow morning, we'll vent it up. We'll actually be able to see something on there. It won't be much, but we should be able to see a coloration difference. And then from there, we'll go through all the components, how to start up, how to shut down, what to expect. We'll go over the procedures that we'll load onto the desktop so everybody knows where they're at. You can go through them at your leisure. We'll go through running the process as many times as we need to till everybody's comfortable. And then the rest of the afternoon, tomorrow, is just what questions we have. The last part of tomorrow is what questions remain on this system, what questions remain on that system. And we'll see how everybody feels. You know, we'll adjust time. And I'm not leaving tomorrow. I'm staying in town tomorrow. So I can be around however long we need to be. And then we'll just get everybody till they're comfortable with this process, making sure there's no questions with loading, unloading. If we need to go through putting the ampules on and off again, we can do that. Whatever it takes to make everybody comfortable. Go through the software, go through the... There's some screens that are maintenance screens that are just be a super user. So not everybody needs to be here for that. Only people who's going to be controlling the users and the overall maintenance. Who's going to be the tool owner. That's who I'm going to want to talk to about that. So that's what the end of the day looks like, into tomorrow looks like.
Export this and get some files on it.
Because of the time restrictions of today and taking 2 hours to troubleshoot something, it's just more of a time management. The process part takes a chunk of time. So since there's only a little bit of time today, I'm putting the process part today, it can run tonight. Once you see it running for 10 minutes, it's just going to run the same way for a couple hours. There's nothing really more to see.
You don't need to be here to stop it. It'll automatically
It'll do it itself. So on a TMA, you can see the peak height was much higher. And we also got this curve. This is normal for whenever you have packing gas or if we had atmosphere and the water in it.
Can you show us tomorrow how to charge the ampule, like the one you did with the water?
You want to fill with water tomorrow?
Yeah, we have empty one.
You have an empty one? I didn't know that.
We ordered it. Yeah, I didn't. You know, it was placed somewhere and then we found it.
Yeah, if you got an empty ampule in the valve, we'll fill it. I got water. Matter of fact, what we'll do is at some point tomorrow, we'll do the pump purge, which you have to do. Take this ampule off, because I'm going to take it back anyway. And we'll put the other one back on, and we'll go ahead and do the pump purge again and do the conditioning recipe since we'll have atmosphere on that. That'll be good exercise. So, this is normal conditioning. Roughly, it'll take 25 seconds or 25 cycles for this curve to come out. And then once you get to a steady state, we're good.
So this green is the cycle curve. Blue one is the pressure, right?
Yeah, so the green is how many cycles are
We're not
completed.
coordination mode right now, we're just
This is your peak height. So this is your indication of kind of roughly how much material is coming out. That's the cycle set point. That's 50. Yeah, that's
Cycle set point, what is it? 50 cycles.
Yeah, 50 cycles is good for commissioning.
So this blue curve, sorry, this is a green one. Will eventually reach 50 and what's that?
Yeah, it's scaling right now. If we put 500, that scale will go to 500.
We're monitoring the pressure to go flat out. It is steady state.
Yeah, it's monitoring more so the peak. We should get down to, yeah. This really should be about 30 millitorr-ish. We're just going to go with the power.
patch is like.
Most of the time with TMAH still, you want to be about 30 millitorr each.
Or go with SOI, because that's
So-
format a lot.
At the end of this, we're going to need that 4-inch wafer.